Welcome back to Profi Plays. I'm Profi, and we're picking up here with session 16 of the Shadowdark series that I'm doing, using Solo Dark as our kind of solo guide. At this point, what has happened? We started out with a party of two, Serial and Veros. The two of them fell upon a mystery where somebody was using control over animals and creatures and the like to create problems for one of the factions in our world. So, starting out in Kingsham, they did some investigation. They found out who was responsible. The ghost of Laios, the sorcerer, apparently forgotten sorcerer, based on what the dungeon with his stuff in it is called. Right, so, they encountered him, and amidst that encounter, Veros was killed. Serial swore to avenge his friend, Veros, and gathered together a party of four: a wizard, a thief, a warrior priest, and himself as a warrior, a fighter, that would go into the steading of the forgotten sorcerer, would gather the hammer of Laios, the sorcerer and villain, and would use that to defeat Laios. As they entered, they immediately, in the first room in that dungeon, encountered an ogre who killed three of the four of them, and the only one that survived was the wizard who happened to be invisible at the time and managed to get out, having failed to provide any kind of stabilization for any of, not without trying, but failed to stabilize any of his companions. They're all dead. So now the question is this. So I'm going to leave this one to the Oracle. We have Sage, the apprentice of Ophelia the sorceress. The question is, does Sage feel any obligation at all to continue, right, in this mission? And can he get Ophelia's permission to do so? Those are really the two things. Because he is the apprentice of Ophelia, so she should have some kind of say in whether or not he can go on this quest. Uh, so that's really, in my mind, what the question is. Can Does he feel an obligation to do this? And will Ophelia allow him to do it? My thought is this. Does he feel like he has an obligation? I don't think he feels that way. So I think this is unlikely, which means I will roll on the Oracle, but I'm going to roll at disadvantage. So we're going to go ahead and roll a 2d20. So remember the way this works, 11 and up is a yes, right? 10 would be some kind of twist, and 1 through 9 would be no. So I'm going to say right now, he dashed back up the spiral stairs to get out of that dungeon. So he is back up. What kind of area is this? Okay, they're in the hills, right? So I assume like the doorway is like in a hillside, something like that. So he has rushed out of that doorway, uh, and he's taken a moment to kind of gather his breath, gather himself, and is thinking about, is this something he feels like he needs to finish or not? 7. No. Right. He does not feel any obligation to continue on this mission. And that's that. Which means then he is going to continue back home to Ophelia. I'm curious whether he's going to make it by himself, because honestly, he's not a very strong character. So there might possibly still be the death of Sage. So just to see if that happens or if he makes it home safe, let's see what happens. Okay. Right. So we're going to go ahead and travel. We're traveling this way. So we started at this dungeon, and Ophelia's tower is here. And so it makes sense that he would probably want to go by this abbey. Oh no, that abbey, I think they don't have any particular relationship with it. He doesn't want to travel too close to this castle because they don't get along very well. Right. So here, so traveling through the hills here, no encounter. Traveling through the plains here, No encounter. Traveling past the abbey here, I don't think he feels any obligation to stop there. Again, no encounter, so he does make it back to Ophelia. He reports in. I kind of wonder what her reaction is like. Because I know interesting thing about her is that she has been involved twice with this mission. One, she actually provided the sword that Serial was using when he died. And two, she provided her apprentice, Sage, who was perfectly willing to go on this mission. And she was willing, she was apparently actually virtually enthusiastic about letting him go. So that's interesting to me. So I'm curious what her reaction is like. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and roll this. Um, hmm, I think I'm just going to roll a d20 and say that the pirate is, the more pleased she is with this outcome. Right. So, and the lower it is, the more, I guess, displeased she is with this outcome. I don't have any instinct one way or the other as to how this is going to go. And so let's see. Six. So she actually isn't particularly happy with this outcome. So it suggests that she actually wanted this to succeed in some way. I'm guessing probably because she thought that if they could get the Hammer of Laos, that might have been useful to her in some fashion, which that would make perfect sense, right? So I think she's unhappy with how this has gone, but at the same time, it's not clear to me that she feels any obligation to gather up another party, or does she? That might be a possibility. So I'm going to check that one. So I think it's unlikely that she feels like she wants to gather another party to go after this hammer, but it's possible. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to again, right, roll on the oracle with disadvantage though, because I think it's unlikely. So is she going to try to gather another party and send them in? Right, possible. Oh, that's absolutely possible. Okay. Oh wow. 14 and 17. The low one is 14. That's a yes. Okay. So I did not see that coming. So it seems then that, well, I honestly thought this was just going to be like the epilogue of what happened. Uh, apparently not. Apparently not. The dice are telling me the story is not yet over. In fact, Ophelia is going to try to gather another crew together to try and. I guess that's a question, right? So here's what I know. Let me give you a little more information about what I know about Ophelia. But so if I can find where I put that information. All right, I'm gonna pull out my thing here. All right, so Ophelia is in C14 is the location of her. Okay, so this is what we know about her. Right, so her personally, her appearance is corrupted by magic. I forget exactly how I described that before. Um, Now her goal, I think this is interesting, is a lust for power. So it makes sense that she would want that thing. So what is she going to suggest they do to have more success with going to get it, right? So here's what I'm imagining, right? So while like I actually haven't statted out Ophelia at all, I don't think that she is somebody I'd want to actually have as a PC, but somebody as a quest giver, I can see that, right? So I think that as she's thinking about this, um, the question is, what can she do to try to get um, people in there and actually like successful? Now, one of the problems is this. She knows that in this world, the way that you become stronger is by gathering treasure. I think that she has been around long enough to know that that's how things work. In other words, she's aware of how XP gets earned in this universe. And she knows that these were really inexperienced people, and they were going for what was actually a very difficult task to start with. So we have a couple options. So one would be she could try to gather a much larger group that might possibly be strong enough to get through and to get that artifact. Uh, Another possibility is that she might want to send them on smaller side quests to try to acquire treasures that could possibly help them to become more experienced and therefore give them a little bit more of a chance when they finally try to go somewhere like this. Because honestly, this was basically a level 5 dungeon they were getting sent into. We add the four of them together, total, they had four levels between the four of them. Right, so it was not going to go well. That's pretty obvious. So I kind of feel like that might be something that she might want to do, where she is interested in trying to get another group together, go and try and do this thing. Okay. Okay, cool. So I think that I need to make a quick note of that because that was not honestly what I expected to happen. So the point is this, that Ophelia is in fact sending Sage to acquire a new party. I'm just gonna make a note of that, to acquire a new party. And I like the idea of it being a party of four, kind of one of each. Um, and so we already have a wizard, not a very strong wizard, but a wizard that exists. And he needs to go out and he needs to find a priest, a thief, and a fighter. That's it. All right, cool. So I think so. So she's sending Sage to acquire a new party. So we need a priest, a thief, and a fighter. And their goal ultimately is to acquire the Hammer of Laios. However, but she's going to send on side quest first, so they can acquire. Let's pay. So I think that that makes some degree of sense as something that um, she's going to send them to do. I like that idea. I like that. All right. So I think that is really what we are going to do. That sounds pretty good. So in terms of where to get people, so I think that it makes sense here. The potential priests. Okay, so I'm just gonna just make a note. A priest is probably going to come from an abbey. So make a list of all the abbeys and kind of check them off as we go through and see if we have succeeded or not in acquiring a priest. We already have a wizard. We don't need one of those. Both a fighter and a thief. Those would probably be from castles. The question is, are you just going to acquire one of the fighters, or are you going to acquire one of the thieves from the dungeon or the jail? They're in that castle. So I think we have some idea of what they're going to do. Now, we also need to accumulate some idea of where treasures might be. So that'd be another thing. So where our treasures would be a question. Okay, so at this point, this is what I'm thinking as in terms of a plan. So the first step is going to be assembling the party, assemble a new party. Goodness. The second step is going to be we need to find out where treasures are located. Right, so find treasure locations that are relatively low level. So that's something that I think I really need to focus on is so I have several dungeons here, and it would make sense, right, that these dungeons, at least some of them, right, have to have uh, like a first level rather than being like the one we went to, like I said, it was a level 5 dungeon. It wasn't going to go well. So we need to do is find relatively low level dungeons that we can go into. Also, another possibility would be breaking into things like treasuries of some of these castles. That's a possibility. I think that's really, really dangerous because these castles tend to have like over 100 guards. I was gonna say over 100 guards or more, but that really doesn't make much sense to say because over already includes or more. But in any case, So that'd be a possibility, but I'm cautious about that one. I don't really want to think too much about doing lots of like heists, that kind of thing. I feel like the odds of that going well are really, really small. So instead, I think it makes more sense. I need to detail more of these dungeons to figure out kind of where are the relatively low level ones. And in the meantime, I do need to go around and send to abbeys and the like to figure out where I can get a priest, a fighter, and so on. So at this point, I'm thinking about kind of where she is. Now, she doesn't have a regular relationship with this castle right here that's neighboring. So I don't think that I'm going to have her send anybody try to I was going to say acquire anyone from there, but try to recruit anyone from there. But it would make sense potentially for her to go. She does have a good relationship with the abbey just to her north. So I think maybe that's the first step. So the question is, have I already detailed anything about that abbey to the north? Because I honestly I don't think I have. I haven't done a lot of detailing of the things near where Ophelia is, apart from her own tower. So looking, yeah, I have not actually detailed that at all. Okay. So in that case, I think this is probably a good place to stop. So I'm going to say our first thing, our first stop next time is going to be the Abbey, just to the north of Ophelia. So it's in C5 in terms of like where it is in my hex map. So that is our plan. And all right. I guess that's what the plan is. I'm also going to have to go through and at least do some kind of basic level setting up of the various dungeons. So at least I know kind of how deep they are, what kind of levels of monsters we'll be dealing with in them. I think that that is a good place to start. And that also means that right now, this is probably a good place to stop. Because honestly, me building an abbey is not the kind of thing that you want to watch happen. It's just me rolling dice a lot, and that's what you normally tune in to do. But very little happens in terms of um, story and the like. So, surprisingly, story's not over. The Hammer of Laios is still something that is interesting, and Laios himself is still active. You need to remember that. Uh, he isn't particularly interested in Ophelia, as far as we know. But some of the things that he's doing may possibly have impacts on the world. I guess we'd find out. As for now, this is Prof. E, signing off.